Minister, thank you for speaking with the ABC.
Pleasure to be speaking to you.
Can you tell us what you know about these bombers?
Well, from the information that has come out already, there have been a few people from well-known family. Apart from that, the leader of this movement is identified to be one Zahran, had been a self-appointed cleric who had come from an eastern village, professing an ideology which was identified as somewhat radical by the local people, and he virtually was, after a few years of radical preachings, he was found to be quite an antisocial element, and the people of the area and others started reporting this to the local police, and he had to go into hiding because of a knife attack that took place. And as late as January this year, the Council of Theologians of the Muslim community had made an official complaint to the police that this radical self-appointed so-called Muslim cleric should be apprehended, and his activity should be looked into thoroughly, since that doesn't augur well for the country and the national unity. He has been propagating extreme ideas, particularly propagating violence. So, but he had been in hiding for well over 2 years, and the failure of the intelligence agencies to track him down or to stop the activities of this so-called organization is baffling to all of us, because his identity was known, and his accomplices, though were not popularly known outside, could have been traced quite easily, because the names had been revealed by some secret service agencies from among neighboring countries, which had been shared with the local intelligence services. So this is what leads to certain questions being asked today as to why this apprehension didn't take place earlier, and was there a complacency. Now, after the event, everybody can jump the bandwagon and start pointing fingers, and that's what is happening in Parliament today. It was quite sad to see people jumping over each other to point fingers, and from top to bottom. So what we need to do is to call for national unity at a time like this. And I must very categorically say that from among the Muslim community, this type of demented ideas and ideologies can never find a single person who would support them. We are outraged, we are dismayed, and we are baffled as to how this could have happened here. And that too to a brother minority religious community, the Catholics and the Christians of this country, on a holy day like this. Such a sophisticated attack, well coordinated, could never have happened without substantial input from some source outside the country. So several questions have to be answered by the investigators in the coming days.
And how do you think, or what have you heard about how the other bombers became radicalized because they were generally educated and came from successful families?
Well, the normal recruitment for the ISIS have been taking place over the internet through various cookies they display, attracting through their propagation by various lectures. I was told that some lectures have been conducted locally by this so-called self-appointed leader of this secret organization. This was never known that they had though they were known to be functioning in that village. Since he went into hiding, most people did not know their activities in the open, but then apparently classes have been conducted, and particularly after a raid that was conducted following some attacks on Buddha statues in an area called Mavanalla, where one of my colleague ministers, Kabir Hakeem, represents. Suddenly several statues of Lord Buddha were vandalized. With that, there was serious apprehension of violence against Muslims, a backlash by the Sinhala Buddhist, which could have, going by the history of this country, such an incident could have sparked serious violence. But fortunately, by the intervention of the government and particularly the minister Kabir Hakeem, going to Buddhist temples, getting their chief priests' interventions, somehow a carnage was prevented. But however, there was heavy pressure and the police had to apprehend the culprits. Some of them were caught red-handed. Then investigations continued. In the process, they stumbled upon a cache of arms, particularly detonators and material used for making bombs to carry out heavy blasts were found in a hideout in Vanatha in the Puttalam district in the northwestern province of the country. So with that hideout being found and some suspects being arrested there, they continue to investigate. So this had happened almost 6 months ago, I presume. So we are yet to know the outcome as to why the culprits could not be apprehended and this larger destruction was not prevented.
Because they knew that they had access to and were gathering explosives.
Yes, particularly after these cache of arms were discovered in Vanatha, it was quite apparent that they were getting ready, because I myself spoke to the Chief Investigating Officer a few times to find out the progress of the investigation. I did never want to interfere with the investigation itself. Just wanted to be informed as to whether, because we are all anxious to see if there are radicalized people, they should not be allowed, particularly after the Mavanalla incidents. We were keen that we can never tolerate such an incident, and this should not be permitted in a multi-ethnic, multicultural society like Sri Lanka, particularly with very sensitive relationship with our majority community. And none of us ever could even imagine that such a heinous attack could take place in churches by the Muslims, since there was no enmity whatsoever towards them. Nor would we ever dream of even damaging Lord Buddha statues, which we feel are sacred to the Buddhists. And it's never the sanction of any believing Muslim in the religion of Islam to desecrate or damage a place of worship or an article which they consider revered object. So it's baffling to all of us, but then we are now looking at the degree of complacency between the important players who should answer for this colossal failure in sharing information and preventing this carnage.
But doesn't what's happened suggest there was a problem with Islamic extremism in Sri Lanka?
Now, this had been identified some time ago. We ourselves, the community leaders, had been speaking out against this. Of course, we have been somewhat complacent because we should have followed it up much more seriously. But nobody would ever even dare think that a Sri Lankan Muslim could turn into such a murderous, dangerous extremist who could go to this extent and do such dastardly things. This was beyond our imagination, because ours is a community which is so peace-loving, and we have a proud record of not resorting to violence, even having been at the receiving end of extreme violence ourselves, having lost several lives when the separatist war was going on. We have been at the receiving end by militant Tamil groups, as well as sometimes atrocities by, atrocities that happened as a result of civil riots sporadically taking place all over the country. And our mosques and Christian churches have been constantly attacked after the war, particularly, and that was a certain amount of majority religious extremists were responsible for creating this that type of violent activity against us. So we were at the receiving end. Now it's a fate of irony that we are being accused of being much more extreme and doing things which does not, it defies imagination.
The issue of foreign interference, do you believe that this is something that has started locally, or this is something that has come about because a foreign group like IS became involved? Like, where did the inspiration come from?
Well, it is very difficult to assume as to how things could have worked out, but we are presuming that recruitment had happened via the internet, like in the many other countries, in the Western countries. Our intelligence agencies have been tipped off time and again. Some in our country have been living in denial, and all of us are complacent about this. The complacency is a matter of degree between everybody in this country. So, nobody could have ever believed that this could take such a devious turn and bring the whole country to a position of, we are all living in a grip of fear. You see?
Just finally, was there a dangerous combination in Sri Lanka with a population of a small group of radicals who were not being taken seriously, who potentially had access to, with the history of Sri Lanka, the expertise to make bombs and the material to make bombs?
About the expertise in improvised explosive devices, nobody believed, you see, because it has all been, usual, their extremism was mainly an intra-community clashes. You see, based on, within the community there are different religious denominations, different groups fighting for local supremacy to establish their own teachings. But then it has occasionally created certain violent incidents where knives have been used to stab one or two, or to, swords and knives have been the normal modus operandi of the groups which engaged in that kind of violence, and that has always been an intra-community affair. So our elders, our leaders, our community theologians usually have decried all this and have managed to contain it locally within that context. It never got out of hand, except for one or two who had.
I meant given it's a separate issue, but you had the LTTE who pioneered the use of this type of this type of attack. They had the bomb making expertise. They'd sourced the bomb making materials. There is this history here, and then you have a group of radicals who are not being taken seriously by the authorities. Was this a dangerous combination? Are we seeing the results of this dangerous combination?
There are now there are many worries about this, because one thing is, it's 7 or 8 people going out and blowing themselves up as human bombs. For any organization, should be the ultimate weapon. In the very first attack itself, you see, the leader and everybody has been a few other people within the group going to this extent is quite baffling. It doesn't stand to reason. So obviously an external force had used them as pawns to achieve a collateral purpose of sending a message to the global community, not for one religion, one community, one nation. So this is, and the name of Islam being used for this purpose. That is where the local Muslims are outraged. In our religion, even at war, you are not supposed to kill children, you are not supposed to harm women, you are not supposed to kill old people. This is the rule that Prophet Muhammad preached, even at a wartime. So this is peacetime. There is obviously no cause that has been obviously stated. So without any reason, killing innocents at a place of worship, and you cannot even during times of war, you can't. The place of religious worship is a place of sanctity, should not be touched, and that's the Islamic rule. Moreover, committing suicide as a means of attack is also, according to many fatwas and theologians, is un-Islamic. So this is a set of demented, misguided people who have been made to believe, or who are trying to propagate the ideology. And I cannot see any possibility of them having any reservoir of support in this country. And perhaps that is the reason that they have once and for all sought to use their ultimate weapon and prove a point. And I also believe that if there is cohesion, proper coordinated action, if there is national unity of purpose, this group, without any reservoir of support in the country, not within the community or outside, could not survive for too long.
Minister, thank you for speaking with the ABC.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.